Today we've got a Royal Rumble on our hands because who are you taking in the 1v1 matchup? Sukuna, the King of Curses, or Meruem, the King of the Chimera Ants? Let's talk about it. All right, shout out to Kirby who asked me this along with a few other questions, but first let's start with this Royal Rumble. Sukuna, Meruem, who are you taking? And honestly, I think this is an extremely difficult fight for both of them because I do think they're roughly equal, like as roughly equal as we can get when it comes to cross-verse scaling, because who can really say at the end of the day? But JJK and Hunter x Hunter are both similarly grounded, I would say. Like, you don't have characters out here snapping away planets or universes, right? Now, obviously, these two are the pinnacle of each of their verses, which is why this is interesting, but they are similar, I would say. So I'm giving neither of them just the straight up edge in terms of like, oh, Meruem's way faster, way stronger. He just one-shot Sukuna, or vice versa, right? So because of that, I think we got to look at the more nuance here. Like, who's the smarter fighter? And both of them are absolute geniuses, right? Like, that's part of their character. But in particular, I would say that strategy and genius leans a bit more towards Meruem because we know that, as the newly born Chimera Ant, he basically is addicted to learning things and mastering them, and master them he does. After these hundreds and hundreds of games against Komugi, we know that he became a strategic genius in his fight with Netero, able to literally thread the needle through the one win condition or finding the one flaw in Netero's attack plan in order to find his opening to attack him. So I think the longer this fight goes on, the more it favors Meruem as he finds and adapts the perfect strategy. And especially if we're talking about post-Rose Meruem, I think he just got too much in his bag via the adaptations he can literally make to his body thanks to Yuppie in the way that he can, disperse his aura like Poof and potentially manipulate and read emotions like Poof. I think, again, the longer the fight goes on, the more it favors him. But could Sukuna perhaps put an end to him before he's able to capitalize on a moment like that? And maybe. I don't really think the domain expansion is an instant win for him because, yeah, Meruem doesn't know simple domain or domain amp, but in terms of cross-verse equalization, I don't think it's unfair to say that if Meruem just uses his ungodly amount of aura in defense, that he could trivialize domain slashes. So I don't think either of them has an attack that's just going to one-shot the other, except perhaps Sukuna's world-cutting slash. So I think that's what this battle hinges on. Can Sukuna get off a lethal world-cutting slash to end Meruem before Meruem inevitably defeats him, either through his genius or through just the war of attrition? And yeah, Sukuna has a whole bunch of cursed energy in RCT, but I think Meruem's aura outclasses that. Obviously, there's no way to actually compare those two things, so if you want to disagree, you can. But again, I think Meruem wins the long battle. Just can Sukuna end him before that? And really, you could just choose what you think there. Personally, I think that Meruem would be able to dodge the world-cutting slash. I don't think he would just be got like that. But, Sukuna's been known to catch people off guard, so maybe he'd be able to do it. I'm just starting to yap here. But again, at the end of the day, extreme diff either way, in my opinion. But I'm going Meruem. And next, we have a related question from Kirby, which was, do I think Sukuna would be able to survive a nuclear bomb? Which is obviously in reference to the fact that Meruem survived the poor man's Rose. Now, would Meruem have survived if not for Yuppie and Poof's intervention? No, but still, he wasn't just instantly killed, right? Like, he did survive that initial blast, and I do not think Sukuna would be capable of that. Now, you could question, Sukuna would never get hit by an atomic bomb, he would be able to run away from it, but that wasn't the question. It's just if Sukuna was, subjected to the effects of a nuclear bomb, would he survive? And I think there is no shot at all. He would be vaporized. The next, Kirby hit me with a couple JJK questions, the first of which is, what do I think full potential Hikari would look like? And Hikari's interesting because I've said this before, he's a punch and kick merchant, right? But he's a virtually immortal one, thanks to Jackpot. So because of how Jackpot works and just that he's fueled with an infinite flow of cursed energy, I don't really know how much he can grow aside from just mastering the fundamentals, right? And being able to make better use of that boundless cursed energy. So I certainly think he can grow and get stronger, but I don't think full potential Hikari looks too much different than normal Hikari, if that makes sense. But what I will say is that the craziest thing he would be able to unlock would be a purposeful use of RCT. We know that in Jackpot it just happens automatically because he's got so much going on, right? But if he knew how to actually do it and thus could control it, then he would become the greatest healer of all time, right? Because if he could output RCT with an infinite supply, he could probably heal virtually any wound and also probably destroy any cursed spirit being able to output that much, right? So he would be an absolute problem in that regard. But in terms of like, you know, him unlocking some really new cool facets of what he's able to do, I don't really know how much of that there is because his ability is just the jackpot at the end of the day. Like maybe he's going to do some cool things with those train doors, but he's not really unlocking any, you know, maximum techniques, as it were. And I don't mean that literally because, you know, probably no one's unlocking maximum techniques since Gege moved away from that. But, you know, unlike Yuji and Yuta, who could kind of do some crazy things by nature of their abilities, like, he's still going to be a punch and kick merchant, but he might be the best doctor of all time. Then finally today, spoilers for JJK, by the way, for anyone who's not caught up, but Kirby wanted to know if I think Yuji has his own version of Sukuna's divine flame, the fire arrow, the furnace. And yes, I think so, because I think that is a baked in, no pun intended, facet of the shrine technique, which we know Yuji to now have. So I certainly think he's capable of his version of this. But we do know that Yuji's cleave and dismantle was different from Sukuna's, right? It manifested as the scissors and like the dotted line whenever he strikes someone. So might his furnace be different? And I think so. I think that he has a more modern interpretation, hence again the scissors versus just the slashes. And I actually put out a whole video back when Yuji first awakened Shrine, talking about how the two of them have different interpretations. I believe it's called like the Butcher and the Surgeon, kind of representing how Sukuna uses it for butchery, right? For chopping up his food and cooking it in the malevolent kitchen. Whereas I think Yuji is much more precise and surgical with his interpretation. So how might that apply to the furnace? And, you know, a modern furnace might be an oven or might be like a microwave, but the only thing I could really come up with that I like, at least so far, is almost like a blowtorch or something, you know, like very focused, intentional application of heat. So maybe he could develop something like that. How he would use it, I don't really know. Like maybe he could just imbue heat into other things as opposed to like literally shooting a projectile in the same way as Sukuna. But honestly, I would love to hear y'all's ideas for what you think his version of the furnace would be. Anyways, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. But just imagine if Meruem did defeat Sukuna and then ate him and absorbed his aura and potential abilities, right? Like, good night universe, both universes. But as always, y'all, thank you for watching.